Hello. Well, I know why you're here. You're here because well, you're having issues with one of the pedals or both of the pedals on your Peavey Vypyr Sanpera pedal. And as far as I know, this adjustment and fix will work on both the Sanpera 1 and Sanpera 2, but I promise for sure it does indeed work on the Sanpera 2. Now, I have no idea how the Sanpera Pro pedal is. That is beyond me. I can't speak to anything regarding those. But anything that says Sanpera 2, this is 100% good for. Something with the Sanpera 1, probably good for too. Now, I should say, in certain presets you won't be able to use the raw wah pedal. Like if you have a pitch shifter, you can't use the wah pedal for wah, but instead this light will be on for you to control pitch shift. So this will let you go from like drop D to drop E to E to drop D to E. Nothing too crazy. And then this one over here, it's preset for volume, and when you click it in, it goes to tuner. So you can see that's tuner here. Then I'll click it in. You see the light change, and now we're back to our normal amp channel. Well, how do these work? Well, they utilize a switch. So when you take the back panel off, I'll show you what the back panel looks like. It is just this. Like I said, it's just a back panel, simple back panel. It's got a boatload of screws, and they all take a number 1 Phillips. So grab your number 1 Phillips, take all these screws off. There's about as many screws as there is on a T-Series Peavey guitar. Typical Peavey, more screws than you need, but it works. But once you take that off, you have full access to everything, and now you can see the moving components of each of the pedals. So now when you hold this in your lap, it's so your right pedal is now on your left, and your left pedal is now on your right here. And they're very, very easy to work and operate. And before you take this apart, I only took it apart so I could show you, but before you take it apart, you should be able to use the pedal as such. You should be able to point the toe down all the way till it bottoms out here, and then you should hear this click, and you'll also feel it on the pedal when you operate it with your hands. So listen and feel for this. And so you're wondering, what's that sound? Well, it is this switch here. You can see this plastic paddle. It works with a set of optical sensors. So as this thing moves farther and away and close to these couple of sensors, it depicts pedal movement. But how you activate it is the switch has to be depressed. And how they do that is they just use a screw on this paddle to press in a simple switch. There's nothing too complicated. And you see this screw is totally adjustable. It has a hex head on it. I'm not sure what size exactly. My guess would be 8 millimeters, but these are made in China, and in all my experience of everything, Chinese hardware is usually halfway between standard and metric. So what works great is in a small adjustable wrench or a set of small pliers. When you turn it clockwise, it runs a screw in, making this button press later. When you turn it counterclockwise, it runs a screw out, making the button hit sooner. And then it's the same story for the other one. Same exact thing, it's not even mirrored. It's 100% all the same parts, completely interchangeable. Now, the question is, where do you want to have these set? Well, it comes down to personal preference. From the get-go, these are supposed to go off after the toe bottoms out. As you can see underneath the toe of the pedal, there are these 2 rubber pads, and they interact with these 2 rubber pads on the on the pedal housing. Now these guys are extremely hard. Extremely hard. I can't get these bottom ones to move with any kind of finger pressure, but these top ones can move a little. So you do have a little bit of play. But how they're designed is the button presses after these make contact. So like you can see here, they're making contact, but my switch isn't flipping. Well, I have them just set just so that you have to give it momentum for it to happen. Now, if you have this screw sticking out too far, it'll happen too soon. And if it happens too soon like this, it's very easy to just bump this pedal while you're up on stage or whatever, and then it turns your pedal on and off. Just because you're bumping it. But if you have it set, too tight, you imagine if the screw is out further, and you go to close it like this. Imagine the pedal is upright like this, but your switch is almost closed like this. Well, if you were to ram this down all the way out of adjustment, you could very easily bend or break this plastic paddle, and you could also shear the circuit board clean off its mounts, and then you'll have tons of issues. I'm not sure if these parts are still available by Peavey. Another thing you could do is have it set so that it triggers after you press this down. That's kind of how they are in the factory, where once these make contact, you really have to kick these suckers pretty hard for it to trigger. That's why I prefer my method. Oops. We'll set this off to the side. Each of these do have a little bit of play. The lever flexes some, and then on some of these, the paddle will actually pivot a little bit on the steel shaft, so that there becomes a little bit of play. And that is the perfect way to have this thing set, so that all you have to do is just give it a little, then lift back up, and now you can turn it on and off with ease. Again, it's the same story with this other side. That's just something to keep in mind. And then, of course, when you're doing this, you'll want to have the back panel off, because while you're doing this, you'll want to test it with your hands. And then once you're happy where your hands have it, keep the panel off, but walk it over to your chair or your rig, whatever, stand above it, and then activate these with your feet. Because how you operate them with shoes on or with only socks is going to be a lot different than how you operate them with your hands. But with your hands, you can have them tuned in much finer. But you got to keep in mind, again, the wah feature will only work under certain conditions. I have to be out of the tuner mode, so now I'm in the normal channels, and now I can use my wah. You see, I have it set so nice, I just have to lean into it. And now it's set pretty nice, and you can hear it kick in and out. And you can see, once in a while you have to give it a little bit more. That's because the paddle for this one on mine in particular has a little bit of that pivot play. So it's not too consistent on this, but my volume has been crazy consistent. And I only have to adjust these about once every year or two. Once every 1 to 2 years, which is pretty good. And it's not hard. It's very easy. It just takes about 3 to 5 minutes to get all these screws off, and 3 to 5 minutes to put them all back in. But once you have that panel off, it literally takes you only 30 to 90 seconds to dial in each side to where you like them. Like I said, just test them before you button it up, because there's a lot of screws. You don't really want to be doing this multiple times. And then something to keep in mind too is you can tighten up these pivot, the pivot bolt. I'll make these float easier up and down. Mine are quite nice. This side's a little stiff compared to this side. That's totally fine. I don't use my volume for fading. I have an additional one for that, because the way I have my effects loop in my Vypyr, because I did the effects loop mod on both, so now I can use this guy as a gain pedal. So by turning this down, it reduces some of my my overdrive gain when I use it. So then I pretty much just set this, forget it, and then I can turn it down all the way to mute it, like between songs or whatever, at a gig for tuning, again, whatever. And then this one's nice, and this one's a little snug, which works well because you spend more time on this pedal than I do. Like I said, this one, it's set it, forget it, but this one I work up and down constantly. Not that I use it a lot, but when I use it, I'm on it. So that's something to keep in mind. Other than that, there's not really any maintenance to these guys. Just make sure every time you go to use it, that this MIDI cable is in there straight and true, and you don't have any bend prongs or anything. Make sure the jack ain't loose, whatever. Sometime I have to replace this lens screen. It was absolutely perfect, but then a guitar took a dive off a stand, and one of the tuning pegs landed right here and cracked it. But I have more. It's a pretty thick plastic, so I have some decent stuff I can replace it with, and they'll be golden. But yeah, if you have any questions, definitely give a shout. Pretty well versed in this Vypyr stuff. You can keep an eye out for more Vypyr videos. I'll be doing a few how-tos on how the VIP2 works, and then the first gen Vypyrs. I've had a variety. I've had the Vypyr 15, the Vypyr Tube 120, that's what that is, and then the Vypyr VIP2. And then I've tried out every model except the Pros in stores, so pretty well versed in these. Like I said, I've done the effects loop mod and everything in these, so they're a blast, especially when you got the right rigs plugged into them, like Variaxes. Makes them a whole heck of a lot of fun. But I'll stop now, and yeah, best of luck to you.